Welcome everybody to this Sunday morning service here at Salt and Light Christian Church. The story that I will be telling you all this morning is about the pastor and evangelist Billy Graham. Billy Graham was born in 1918 on a dairy farm in North Carolina. And he was raised by his parents as a Christian family. They brought him to church as a young man and a child. And he grew up believing that he was a Christian, that his family were Christians because they went to church and his whole family was Christian. However, as a child and into adolescence, as a teenager, he basically just lived his life how he wanted to. And it wasn't until he was around the age of 16 when one day he came home after playing baseball with some of his friends. And his mom asked him to go to church with her that evening to a revival service being held by a famous evangelist who came to their town. And Billy Graham was reluctant, but not wanting to upset his mother, decided to go with her. And that evening, at that revival service, he felt like the pastor was speaking directly to him. And the message of him being a sinner and needing salvation for his sins was just abundantly clear to him. And afterwards, it stuck in his head to the point that it was almost all he could think about. He even discussed it with his friends, and the next night or a couple days later, while this revival services were still being held in his hometown, him and one of his friends decided to go and check out this service again for themselves. And heading to the tent where the revival service was being held, these couple of young men, being kind of hooliganish, not really all that serious about it, but interested, went into this big tent, and it was just full of people. Every seat was full. It was crowded. And the two of them hadn't gotten more than a step or two in when they kind of looked at each other and thought to themselves, we should probably get out of here. But before they had the chance to even turn around, a large man, an usher, stepped behind them and put his arms around each of their shoulders. With a huge smile on his face, welcomed them to the revival service. And he ushered them down the middle aisle to a couple of seats near the front row. And so the two of them, feeling like they were kind of stuck here now, decided to stay and to listen to what this evangelist, this pastor, had to say. And that evening, as the pastor preached, the Holy Spirit worked through his message and reached out to Billy Graham's heart. And Billy Graham felt the calling of the Holy Spirit that night. And at the end of the service, when the altar call was made, he got up and he went forward in that tent and gave his life to Jesus and accepted the Holy Spirit into his heart. A few years after this, about 4 years later, he felt the calling to be a pastor. And with a little bit of convincing to his parents, he decided to go to Bible college, where he got his degree and ended up beginning his ministry, where he would go on to become one of, if not the most famous pastor of the 20th century. And through his evangelistic ministries, would bring thousands of people to Christ. So thank you. Let's bring the music up.